everywhere. I could have ended up just like that broken road with a dead end in my path. Thank the Lord that I've got more than that. In this life there's nothing certain except the curtain that rises to the stage. Silly games of second guessing, I won't forget the lessons that I don't deserve. Because one street over there's a life I could have known would have kept me from the one I love today. One street over there's a life I could have known. Things aren't always.
Hi, this is Scotty Inman. You're listening to the best in Southern gospel, country gospel, and bluegrass gospel on
Turn everything on and say hello to everyone here. This is, again, 1100 WSGI. I'm U-Turn LaVern, one street over. And I have got my friend Suzanne Geerholt, and I always say it wrong, Geerholt. It's just exactly like it looks. But Suzanne is here, and she's with Decisions, Choices, and Options. But I would be remiss if we didn't say just praying for all the people so devastated by the storms. It just breaks my heart. I have a friend that lives out there, and her husband were out of town and have been cut off from her kids. Now, she's got older kids. I mean, I don't know if any of the kids that are actually adults now are living there, but they've got their church family.
Yeah.
But they can't get to their kids.
Where are they?
They're in North Carolina. I guess up in the mountains there.
Okay.
The roads have been wiped out to their house.
Yeah.
And so she can't get to her kids. And I haven't heard any updates from them. It's the Dasher family. I'll just say, there's so many families. And all these incredible stories, we all just, my prayer is, God, show me what I can do.
Right.
And of course, pray. But show me what you need from me. If it's money, absolutely. Where does it need to go? Because I think we all get frustrated. And this kind of tie into what we're going to be talking about here. Okay. We all have things that, we're like, God, you've entrusted this to me. We are so blessed. We're so blessed. Where do you want me to put the financial gift that you've given me?
Right.
What do you want me to do with it?
Right.
And we've all, and I'm all for tithing to you church folks, but I know too many churches that are sitting on bank accounts. And that frustrates me. Yeah. Sitting on savings, and they are all about preserving tomorrow. Stop it. Right. What is going on today that we need to do to change the dad blame world? And that's why I love, and again, just pray and just constantly pray to God. Say, show us what we need to do. Because to just continue to give to overloaded funds, if you're in that area and can take cash and just give it to people,
right,
to help them. I think when going through what we did in Mayfield with our city getting wiped out, that, and I didn't live there. I mean, that's where I grew up. And so that was the thing when people were going through that, is just people just needed cash.
Right.
Because they were waiting on something from the government that just took forever to come and sometimes didn't even come. You just don't know what to do. So pray for God to show you. Right. And that's my prayer. And continue to pray for God to really show you what to do with your finances, because there are some amazing things that are really changing our world from the inside out. That's what I love. DCO is Decisions, Choices, and Options. We call it DCO. We think everybody knows what we're talking about. We're going to the DCO dinner, and they're like, "What is that, LaVern?" And I just love it because it was probably one of the first things that came across my line of sight. It really was. Whenever I had just come off of the campaign trail, and after running for office, and I've been going on these mission trips to Mexico now, and seeing how we're going in and changing the communities in Mexico from the inside out. We're coming in and we're building churches, and we're having medical clinics, and I go in and get to put glasses on people and just love them and teach them about Jesus. And why are you here? Because of Jesus. That's what that. And so, that was my prayer first time I went into Mexico, was like, what can we do here to change our country from the inside out? Because we're now the mission field. I've got so many newcomer friends. I've got so many immigrant friends, and they're coming here. Especially, I have this friend from the Congo, and he lived in a refugee camp. Met and married his wife, had 4 kids there, and finally was able to immigrate, and he considers this his mission field. And he's amazing. His name's Solomon. He's just the coolest thing ever.
That's amazing.
But they consider us the mission field now. So how can we change our community from the inside out? First time I heard about decisions, choices, and options, it was at a Republican meeting because I was serving, I guess it's chairman. I don't know exactly what my role was, but I had Joy came in, and I was like, "What? This is the coolest thing ever!" And I immediately said, "Okay, I want to be a part of this, and have been since then." And guys, this is one of those things. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you're like, "This makes a difference. This is changing things." And I mean, that's my setup for it. So I'm going to throw it to you now, and we're going to just talk about what's going on. We got a big fundraising dinner tomorrow night, and if you need a seat, I got some seats at my table. We want to fill it, but just how do we want to start this to unpack for people? This is the Robertson County dinner that's happening tomorrow night. It's at Temple Baptist up in White House. So
6 p.m.
We need you there, 6 p.m.
Yeah.
But what can you tell them to get them there, and just kind of the backstory? I mean, I'm going to let you talk now for the next half hour.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So for those of us who don't, or for those of you out there who don't know what DCO is and what we do, we actually are a sexual risk avoidance education program, and we go into middle schools and high schools, almost all of the middle schools now in Robertson County, teaching healthy boundaries to students, life choices to high school students, and the cost of parenting, hoping that we will be able to equip all of the students with the tools and healthy decision making so that it will lead them to abundant life ultimately. But the way we do that is showing them all of the positive outcomes and the negative outcomes when they choose to delay sexual activity until marriage, where it was designed for it to begin with. And then the negative outcomes, what happens if they don't? What happens if they get involved in risky behaviors, which is so common in our adolescents? They don't know what they don't know, and they don't know the dangers that are out there. And so they're participating in behaviors sometimes not having any idea. So we let them know that when they're participating in sex outside of marriage, that things like STDs and STIs can happen, that unhealthy relationships happen. They're kind of practicing for infidelity is what we tell them. And that's what the statistics show. So we do lots and lots and lots of research to make sure that we're giving students the accurate information that they need, whether it's from a statistic outcome perspective or from a medically accurate perspective. But for those students who have already engaged in sexual activity, we also give them the tools to stop doing that, to not only to stop it, but how to move forward in a healthy way, to have those healthy relationships going forward. For those that may have encountered an unplanned pregnancy situation, we also give them the information that they need to be able to make a decision that they can live with going forward. What does it look like to parent a child? What does it look like to from a medically accurate standpoint? What does abortion look like? What is really involved in that? And then what does adoption look like? Because there are two options that lead to life for that child and for those parents. So we talk to them about all of those things, all of the current statistics, all of the medical accuracy, so that they will be able to make the healthiest decisions for them going forward. And our goal is that we will have strong marriages, that we will have strong communities, that we will have healthy children, and for generations to come. So that's what DCO does in the classroom. We do that in public schools, in middle school and high school. And we also do that in private schools, and we have some curriculum that can be used at home with children as well. We have some faith-based curriculum, and we have public school curriculum. Really, the only difference between the two is I can have a little bit of a different conversation in a faith-based environment that puts some scripture to the verses, or put some scripture to the slides and the material that we cover. But the beauty is that God's design for a marriage between a man and a woman and children inside of marriage is the healthiest outcome for everyone, really, is a beautiful thing. And science backs that up.
And again, that's just a brief overlay of what they do. It's incredible when you sit and you hear, number one, the statistics and the difference this is making, and the attitudes that change, because you will give them a little test, right?
Right. We give them a pre-test when they come in to see what their knowledge is and what their attitudes are and behaviors, and then we give them a post-test when we leave. And when we do that, we see an increase of about anywhere from 20 to 30% of students understanding that delaying sexual activity is the best way to prevent STDs and STIs or an unplanned pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
We see anywhere from a 50 to 60% change in their understanding that making that one decision to delay sexual activity will help them reach their lifetime and career goals.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see their understanding of what parenting really looks like. A lot of them who thought that if they were in an unplanned pregnancy situation as a teenager, that the best thing would be to either parent or abort is what they think. They think those are their two options. And so we see a decrease in that parenting is the best option of about 18%. And then in abortion, we see a decrease of about 31%.
Wow.
So saving lives right there off the bat. And then we see anywhere between a 70 and 100% attitude change on adoption, because they had no idea that adoption was a beautiful option, that they could still have a relationship with their child potentially, that there are different types of adoption, what all adoptive parents have to go through, and that the birth parents are in the driver's seat making the decision of who will parent their child long term.
You know, and it's so funny that we're having this conversation. I won't say who I had this conversation with, but it's somebody here in the community. And I called them, and again, I have some seats still at my table. That's one of the. I know I have a dear friend of mine, and she's been blessed financially, and I've invited her a couple of times, and she's like, "Can I just give you money?" You can, but you know what? You have no idea the impact of this until you see it. And here's the thing: I guarantee you're going to give us more once you see what's going on, because it's going to just take your heart. And I know it's hard, guys. I've got this dinner, and I've got the Isaiah 117 house dinner on Thursday, and I know you're busy, but this truly, guys, we're in an election year, and I know all of our prayer is for our country to get back on track. We may be in for a long haul before our country really is what we want it to be, but you got to trust God on it. But the thing you can do, there's a preacher I follow. I talk a lot about Bobby Davis at Life Church out in Cookeville because I just love the guy. But he said one time, it was like after election, and people were like, well, what are we going to do? He's like, I did my part. I voted. He goes, now just pray to God that if it's within your power to affect it or change it, then it's your responsibility. But if it's not your responsibility. And so figure out what is.
Right.
This stuff within our community is our responsibility. You know, you do everything you do from a perspective of voting and encouraging and doing all the things you do that you think is, what God wants you to do. That's great. But then beyond that, I can't do anything about Washington.
Right.
I can't.
That's right.
I can have some effect on my state because I know the people who run the state, who are elected officials in the state. So I can talk to them. Anybody can, by the way.
Right.
But they're very approachable, and too, even on a federal level, they are approachable. Our representatives that I've had the experience with, but nonetheless, the thing you can really do that makes the difference, that is your responsibility, is doing this kind of stuff from the inside out. And so you will be blown away by this program if you come to the dinner tomorrow night. Guarantee you, if we can find you a seat, and we need you there. This is at Temple Baptist tomorrow night. It's going to be 6 to 8. I will be there, and I would love to have my table packed, and I'd love to pack another table. So, but no, I invited somebody, and I was going to tell this story, and it blew my mind because I said, you've got to be there, and I don't know that they can because their work's going to be late, but I'm going to stay on them. I'm going to call them and say, hey, saving you a seat. We talked about you this morning. I didn't say your name, but we talked about you because he and his wife had adopted a girl. I didn't know their daughter was adopted. And he says, oh, that's her. I was like, what? And he said, yeah. He said, we had wanted to adopt a child, and the mother was unexpected, pregnant and had a child and selected us. And it was an open adoption, so we would visit. They, all these things. They had this life together. Yeah. And he says it's just been, that's their story. And I'm like, that's the DC. That's one of the, because that's Joy's story.
That's Joy's story.
You want to tell, that's what started this to me is what got my attention, because this is somebody who's like, I got to do something.
Yeah.
And man, did she.
Yes, she
Can
did.
you tell Joy's story?
I sure can.
Okay, do that for us.
So in 2002, Joy had a friend whose daughter became a pregnant teen at the age of 15. And because Joy is an adoptive mother, and her son is
Who's
Jacob,
serving in the
who
military,
is serving in
He's
the
my
Air Force.
prayers.
That's
I
right,
know.
in
Thank you for your
Oklahoma. Thank
service.
you for praying for him.
Yes.
So her son Jacob was adopted as an infant, and they have an open adoption with Jacob's birth mother, and it's a beautiful thing. There's support system for both Heather and Jake, and for Heather and her family, and then the support for Jacob inside of the Wassel family is just a beautiful thing to see. If you just need to get to know the Wassel family to see that.
Amazing.
And you would not know, you would, again, like to your point, you would not know that Jacob was adopted. He is Joy and Billy Wassel's son.
You bet.
And so, so she was in this relationship with a best friend, whose daughter was pregnant at 15, and she was going to make an adoption plan. She knew Joy. Joy was in relationship with them, was helping her walk through the process of what that looked like to be connected to an adoption agency and select that family for her child and be able to give that child the best life possible with a married mom and dad. Because what we know is statistically, only 2% of teen pregnancy relationships will the mom and dad actually end up getting married. And so the best environment for that child to grow up is in that married mom and dad home, a couple that is ready to raise that child. And so they were headed down that road, and this teenager came home one day, and Joy found out that she had changed her mind and she was not going to make an adoption plan, that she was deciding to, in her terms, keep the baby.
Right.
Because she was being called a horrible person for trying to make an adoption plan, that she should just keep her baby, and all of the things that she was hearing. Not only was she
How can
hearing,
you give your baby away.
right. And not only was she hearing that negative information from her peers, but she was hearing that information from some of her teachers too. And so Joy, who is a former educator, or what at the time was a former educator, she was staying home with Jacob. Jacob was about 5 years old, and her plan was to go back into the classroom and teach marketing. That was what Joy did. And so she just could not let go of this. What is the deal with all of this negativity towards adoption? Why are we having this conversation? And so she had a friend, I believe, that was on either the Board of Education or the commission, who she kept saying, we've got to do something about this. We have to teach people about adoption and why it's a beautiful thing and not a negative thing. They actually had people telling this young lady and one of our other students who ended up making an adoption plan, she would be better off to have an abortion than to make an adoption plan. So when Joy heard that, she was like, okay, we have to do something. And this friend of hers said, you're an educator, figure that out. So Joy did. She put together a curriculum and went to the principal of the high school she'd been teaching at Hendersonville High School, and asked if she could present to her former marketing students this information on, really, it started out as a positive adoption, educating on adoption awareness to teens, so that they would understand that if they had a friend in that situation, they would not give them negative information or negative feedback, but it would be a positive situation. And this would be something that would be a life-affirming decision for both that teenager and that child. So she did, and DCO was born in one classroom that day in 2002 in Hendersonville. Yes. And so it has grown since then by word of mouth. What ended up happening was the teachers loved that program so much that they would invite her into all of the classrooms. And they realized that this wasn't the root of what Joy was trying to get to. The root was, this was a difficult decision. Teenagers were ending up in difficult decisions. Why was that? And so it's kind of like why are people falling in the creek? Why are they falling off the ledge? Well, let's go downstream and figure out why, or upstream and figure out why that's happening, and let's solve that problem. And so what it was we had all these teenagers engaged in all of this risky sexual behavior. And if we could get them to understand that they were worth more than that,
Amen,
as a teenager, and that activity was designed for marriage to begin with, then we could stop them from having to make some really difficult decisions and maybe stop them from some of the negative consequences that they were experiencing. Teenagers make up 50% of the new STD cases every year. 50% of the new cases every year, even though less than 30% of their population are actually engaging in sexual activity. So it is so risky for them on so many levels. And that we know leads to infertility and cancer and lifelong diseases that they may be having to navigate around. It affects their marriage one day and conversations that they're going to have with every partner that they have if they keep going down that road. So unhealthy. So Joyce said we've got to get to with the help of teachers. We've got to get to the point where we're helping students understand that they don't have to participate in this. This is not something that's just expected for them, because so many of them think, oh, this is just what I'm supposed to be doing at this time. And so the sexual risk avoidance education, or at the time abstinence education, is what was a result of that. And as we've grown, we were teaching in a 9th and 10th grade class, and what health and wellness is where DCO is taught. And fantastic that every student who graduates in the state of Tennessee has to take a health and wellness class to graduate. So that's where we were teaching in. Well, those 9th grade teachers were saying, hey, we have kids who are coming to us from middle school. They need to know this information in middle school so that they can start to set healthy boundaries ahead of time, so that they don't come into high school thinking that they have to be sexually active. So Healthy Boundaries was born, and we started teaching in the middle schools. And then Cost of Parenting was just kind of naturally birthed out of those two programs. Because we still had people who came in, and it's hard to change minds. Once your mind is set on something, it is difficult to change minds. And so when we started looking at what about those teens who are maybe in that position where they're trying to figure out, I'm in an unplanned pregnancy situation, what does that look like? We've talked about the cost of parenting. To those juniors and seniors. They're the ones that are about to go out into the world, and they really need to know what those budgets and things look like. So we go into their financial planning classes, and we let them do a hands-on activity and work with them on what does it cost? How much do diapers cost in the first year? What does formula cost in the first year? What are the things that you need? Baby bathtubs, safety equipment, clothing, all of those things. And they get to add up for just the first year what it would cost to raise that child. And when they see the price tag of $15,000 to $20,000, they realize they on their own don't have that kind of money. And if they don't have the education to get the jobs that they need, they can't make that kind of money either. And bringing a child into their world at that time does not allow them to reach their educational and lifetime goals. And so when they go through that program of doing the hands-on activities, they see, we actually have one young man that told us, I can't even afford to have sex. Like, you are so right. You cannot. So that's kind of how our programs were birthed originally and have grown to now. What we started hearing just a couple of years ago was this is such great information. And with all three of these curriculum building on each other, we see such a difference. In Sumner County, we've seen a reduction in the teen pregnancy rate of 65.5% from 2002 to 2019.
Say that again. That's the one that blows me away at the dinner every time. And I've people at my table said, did you hear that? I'll say that. Did y'all catch that? So tell that statistic again.
So in Sumner County, where we've been teaching all three of our programs now for several years, there has been a 65.5% reduction in teen pregnancy from the year 2002 to 2019. It became difficult to collect that information after 2019 because of the way health departments are reporting things like that. But from that time period that we can see, 65.5%, which is about a $1.25 billion savings for taxpayers, because each teen pregnancy costs taxpayers about $20,000 to $25,000. So our teachers are now saying this is great information, but parents are so busy, and we've had the introduction of cell phones and the internet and social media, and the target on our kids for being sexually active, or all kinds of confusion goes on around that topic for them. They've said, we need to equip our parents. Can you tell the parents the same things that you're telling the kids so that we can all be saying the same thing to our students. And so we have now developed a parent power program where we can go into community organizations and churches and equip parents on the information that we see and that we know when we do the research about social media. And it has grown now into sexting and cyberbullying and sextortion and things we could have never dreamed about in our generation that our kids are having to deal with. The kids are dealing with it. Our parents are going to have to deal with it. We want parents to be on the front lines teaching their children so that we're all able to protect and provide that. Our job is to train up the next generation so that when they're older, they will not depart from the ways that they're supposed to walk in.
Amen. Amen. My goodness, this is such good stuff, guys. We need you to just really get on board with this. A couple of things that you said, I just want to kind of drive home. Talking about the kids and that they just want to be told they don't have to.
Right.
Like so many of them, and that's one thing I've heard at different meetings that we've had and stuff, is that's a common theme that they get from the kids, is they're just so thrilled for somebody to tell them, I don't have to participate in this risky sexual behavior.
Yeah.
It's okay for me to say no.
Yeah.
And that is something that blows my mind, that I'm in the public school system now. Some of these kids, they have no foundation of any kind of healthy sexual behavior.
Right.
None, because they're getting it all off that device.
Right.
And it is not healthy.
Right.
Not at all. And that is what they're being drawn into. That's the common theme, the little joke. You hear them joking about stuff, and you just want to go, I'm just thinking we need to get some Jesus on. I just keep going back to that because I mean that's my focus. And of course this is not a spiritual based program that goes into the schools. This
Right.
is just a science-based program that just says this is just the truth about it. And I love, there's so many things. I should sit here and make notes while you're talking. So I say, okay, talk about this. The one thing that I absolutely love, and I always forget what it's called. It's like you'll go in and you'll ask them in the financial planning, how many of you want to live in poverty? And none of them raise their
Right.
hands.
Right.
And so how do you respond to that? How do you explain that question?
So
I love this one.
all of our programs are based on the Brookings Institute research. They did research for 25 years on how we can keep people out of poverty, how, especially in teens, when we're talking to teens. And so we have what we call the success sequence, which
Yes.
is what all of our programs are based on. So we share that at the end of each program: healthy boundaries, life choices, and cost of parenting. If students will graduate from high school, they can do these three things in order: graduate from high school, obtain full-time employment, and wait until they're 21 to get married and then have children inside of marriage. They will have anywhere from a 3% to 9% chance of living in poverty. Across the board, regardless of the demographics or background, it really comes out to about 5%. They have a less than 5% chance of living in poverty if they will graduate from high school, obtain full-time employment, and wait until they're 21 and get married and then have children inside of marriage. A less than 5% chance of living in poverty.
That's powerful.
I don't know what our poverty rate here is in Robertson County, but in most places it's higher than 5%.
Oh, it's astronomical. And you look into the homes, and you've got a whole lot of single parent homes.
Right.
You've got families that are dependent upon child support and different things, and all these things that just do not come together. And a lot of the times it's because these children have been born, they have kids early, and all of
We're in
these
some generational poverty cycles or
Right.
generational teen pregnancy cycles.
Mhm.
And so that is, you were saying earlier, one of the things that we go in and tell them is, regardless of the decisions that have been made for you in the past, as a teenager and somebody whose brain is developing to make those decisions that will set the foundation for the rest of your life,
Mhm.
you have the ability and the authority to make a decision for you and this one body that you have and this one life that you have that can be different going forward.
Mhm.
And you can break those chains of generational poverty cycles or generational teen pregnancy cycles. I think the most heartbreaking thing that we heard was going into a classroom, and I can't remember now, I think it was an 8th grader. So middle school, but coming up into high school. And she actually looked our educator in the eyes when she told her that, the majority of teens are not having sex. Statistically, only 30% of our teens are having sex. So they're really in the majority when they're not. But they don't have to say yes. And even if they've crossed that line, they can still say no today and going forward. We give them the tools to be able to do that also. But this young lady came up to our educator and she said, I didn't know that I could say no.
That blew my mind.
She didn't tell us the background story of that, and so we can only suppose what that was for her. But that's amazing to me that our kids don't know that they can say no to sexual activity, and that they have a voice, that they can make a decision for them that leads to abundant life for them.
It's just you mentioned educators. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Who comes in and teaches these classes?
So we have certified sexual risk avoidance educators that come in. They actually go through a program with Ascend, the national organization for sexual risk avoidance education, and we have about 14 people on staff now at DCO across 11 counties of Tennessee. Robertson being the second one that we went into. So we have a staff in Robertson County, program director, and 2 educators that go into the classrooms. Again, they're certified educators, some of them moms, some of them young people, across the board, so that we can teach students from all different perspectives. And so, yeah, our educators are
They're
certified in sexual
educators.
That's our specialty.
That's just it. And so
that's what we do.
now I'll tell you, this is my husband and I were talking this morning, and I didn't realize that when Joey first started this, she was in all these other classrooms. We're CTE teachers. I teach audio video production. He teaches criminal justice.
Yeah.
Can I have them into my classroom? I mean, could we make that happen? Because I told him, I said, I don't know if they could, because it's not the health science curriculum.
Right. So we actually teach to the Tennessee state law is very clear on family life education, and what needs to be taught. And then the standards line up with Tennessee state law. So we teach to the standards in the classroom. Life Choices meets, I believe, 13 standards in the wellness class, and I believe 8 standards in the financial planning class. So if there's a standard that we can meet, the students have to have it anyway. They have to have that education anyway. We fall into the financial planning because we talk about budgeting and the need for healthcare, and where does healthcare come from? If somebody ends up on public assistance or government assistance, where does that come from? Who pays for that kind of thing? And statistically, what we know is that 83% of teens who end up in an unplanned pregnancy situation and choose to parent, by the time the child is 5, will end up on government assistance, because they won't be able to obtain the jobs that they need to raise the income to not only provide for themselves, but that child too. So as long as we meet the standard in the classroom, we can absolutely come in. We've come into all kinds. I believe in middle school, because of the way it's structured, with the AB schedules and things like that in Robertson County, we have actually gone into choir classrooms or band programs or things like that, because part of what we're teaching is healthy relationship skills, and all students need to know what that is. That helps them be able to navigate life, whether it's a friendship or a dating relationship or a marriage one day down the road. So those healthy relationship skills can be taught really in any class.
I think that because he's one of the criminal justice teachers up at Springfield. And from that perspective, he could tie it into how the unhealthy sexual relationships lead to so many problems in the criminal justice system.
Right.
It does.
Well, fatherlessness is a huge determination.
So we might could make that,
Absolutely.
And see, and then you've talking about the social media aspect. You come into my classroom for that.
Yes.
And big time.
And how you use social media.
Yes. Well, see, that's one of the drive. I've talked to my principal. I said, that's one of the big things I really want to stress from the very get-go with my kiddos is you've got to think about the social media aspect, because I tell every one of them, this comes up on test all the time in my classroom. True or false? If you are on social media, you are a broadcaster. And they'll go, no. I'm like, yes, you are. If you are putting anything out about your life on social media, you are broadcasting. Everybody's a broadcaster now.
Yeah.
And it used to be, you had to get on the radio. I mean, not anymore. We're all broadcasters because of that little device in our pocket. If you're on social media in any capacity, every now and then I'll find a student that's not, and that their parents will not let them have a phone. I'm like, I love your parents. Your parents are my favorite when they won't let them have phones, at an early age. And
Yeah,
so,
and I don't know any child who really appreciates that while they're a
they don't wanna
child. You'll
hear it.
actually hear tomorrow night a student say, I don't have this social media, but and that wasn't my decision. That was made for me. But now that she's starting to see some of what happens on social media and some of the anxiety and the depression and the leading to suicide for some of her friends, she understands that it was a good decision that was made for her.
Yeah.
And so now she would make that decision,
Awesome.
but not to begin with.
I'll tell you. Well, no, they don't. Any of them want to hear that.
Right.
But this is just. I can't say enough about this program, guys. And kind of coming back around, I know I probably upset some of my church people out there when I said, you're worried about what's going in the future with your building. I understand. We need places to worship. I do get that. I worked in a church for 7 years. I know how the sausage is made. I get it.
Yeah.
But I do know of churches, and I'm not talking about the one I worked with at all, but I do know of churches that I have been associated with because I maybe know people there, and they talk about how they've got this much money in the bank. And it's a huge amount. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very cautious about how I tithe to a church, because are we being the church? That's my thing.
Right.
And I just think we have really moved away from what the church is supposed to be. So yes, pray about your tithes, pray about your tithes. But things like this, I believe with all my heart, and I'm sure preachers will be like, no, LaVern, it's been whatever. But I've studied it too. And I believe with all my heart, anything that I give to God is part of my tithe. And what I give to DCO, I'm giving to God because I know it is making a difference from the inside out. And DCO is part of my tithe and will continue to be.
And we get to go into the places that churches can't go into because
Absolutely.
some of those students will never see the inside of a church.
Yep.
Some of those students will never meet a youth pastor,
Yep.
but all of those students are having relationship with one another. And that is where the majority of our students are, is in that public school. And so we get to walk in there and share truth and hope information with them. And not only does that strengthen our kids who are coming from that church environment, who may, or quite honestly, may not have heard any of this information, because our churches aren't always talking about it.
No.
And so, but if they are, and they've said, this is a decision I've already decided to make, now they have the ability to say, here's why. It's not just from a biblical perspective that I'm making this decision, although that would be enough. Here, scientifically, here, medically accurately, understanding that I'm making this decision because it is the healthiest decision for me. It's the best decision for me, not only physically, but financially, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so they can say that to their peers in a way that we can't. Yeah. But those other kids who may never, ever, ever have a parent or another adult other than a teacher speak truth into their life, that they can have this healthy life too, that they don't have to not have this, that this will offer them the best outcomes in life. What happens one day when somebody does introduce that gospel to them? Somebody does plant that seed. Like we've planted the seed, somebody else can come along and water it, and we will get to watch all of that growth happen. So we like to think that, and we know that we're going in sometimes with a pre-gospel message for those people who that's what they want to be investing in, is how does that tie in to a gospel message? That's how it ties in for us. We get to share that information to the whosoever. Amen. And then we get to see God do the growth.
I love it. I love it. I love this program. It was the first one that got my attention outside of the church walls. And you need to be a part of it. And if you want to know more about this, come to the dinner tomorrow night. I've got some seats. I can hook you up. But it's at Temple Baptist up in White House. And this is the Robertson County fundraiser. There was one. What time of the year do we have the one up in Hendersonville?
It's usually in late March or April.
So I think have that one.
Yeah, in the spring.
And so I'll be at that one too, as long as I possibly can. And so we have this one, but this is specifically about Robertson County. So I've been trying to kind of gear my invitations of people to Robertson County people. Right. Now, I've invited a lot of ministry leaders because I really think we so desperately need this in our churches. Yeah. And trying to get my son there because and I've talked to them about it all the time because I now have an 8-year-old grandson. Yeah. And he's on the edge of hearing this stuff. And you know what blows my mind? I talk about all my friends that are immigrants. I've got so many, and I love them so much. If you haven't met newcomers to this country and really getting to know them, you don't know what you're missing. But anyway, I digress. But I have a friend of mine. She's from Egypt. And I went over to her house one day, and she was just angry. I was like, "What is wrong? Y'all have ruined sex." That's what she said to me. Y'all have ruined sex in this country. I'm like, "What?" And she just went on this tirade about how the sexualization of this country, because here and she's brilliant. She was a teacher in Egypt. Her husband's a doctor. They're just brilliant people, and they tickle me to pieces because they're frustrated. They immigrated here to they want their children to have freedom.
Yeah.
True freedom. And because they are in a predominantly Muslim country, they are Christian, and they are highly discriminated against, in Egypt. And so that's the reason why you have all they're Coptic Christians that are moving to the States, and there's so many of them, beautiful people. But they're coming in here, and they are very frustrated with what the kids are getting in school. And I hear it over and over and over. And they're like, "What are y'all doing?" And I don't know that they're having second regrets or second thoughts about coming to America, but they're going, "What in the world?"
But they're certainly getting strategic about where they let their kids go to school.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget it. She let me have it. I was like, I didn't do it. But y'all, and she lit me up. And it was just the funniest thing, but I thought she's right.
Right.
She's
We've
like,
been
"What?"
asleep.
Yes.
We had no idea that there truly was an agenda to reach our kids through sexualization. And the way that it started was through the colleges. And so there was an evil man named Alfred Kinsey who was doing some research and was teaching this in the colleges. The idea was if we could get into the colleges, those are the next generation of parents. If we can affect those people that are going to be raising the next generation, now we've changed it from the inside out. So while we're trying to do that for good, there is a nefarious movement that is trying to do that for evil also. And so I believe it's Wilhelm Reich, Margaret Sanger, and Alfred Kinsey are all in that same generation that started the sexual revolution. So that was back in the 1920s. So we're talking 100 years. This has been 100 years in the making. And what we started to see was free love, and all of the things started rolling down that hill. And so now we see that the biggest provider of sexual education in the United States of America is Planned Parenthood. And their idea is, kids are going to have sex anyway, so we'll just teach them how to use a condom and birth control. Well, those things don't protect them from STDs and STIs. The reality of using condoms and birth control for protection is they have a failure rate. There is no 100% guarantee of not contracting STDs or STIs or an unplanned pregnancy unless you are abstaining from sex until marriage, where it was intended for.
And the Planned Parenthood, that's one of the reasons why you stay involved in your political things that are going on. Because if you're funding Planned Parenthood, I'm not supporting you. Period. If you will turn me off of you so quickly if you're funding that. And that's the reason why I'm not part of the teachers union, guys. I'm part of the Christian Educators Union. And that's the reason why, is because the teachers union, whether or not, I know we've got a better version of the teachers union in Tennessee. I haven't really studied it. But if you're giving any dollar that I'm putting into dues to Planned Parenthood, you're not getting my money.
Right.
That's all there is to it. And so that's the reason why I am in Christian Educators Unions instead of the teachers union. Bottom line, the protection of the unborn is the thing that I will absolutely, we've got to get that right. I think so when we started having such a lack of respect for our children, that is when things really started turning.
No value. And that's part of what we try to go into the classroom is remind students that they have intrinsic value, that they have inherent worth, that they are so worthy, but they're also so capable of making decisions that are better going forward for the next generation than they've been handed sometimes.
And I keep talking about my friends. I was in another one of their houses one day, and they've got a bunch of girls. And I walked in, and it was right at the holidays, and they were getting all dressed up. They observe Christmas later than we do, and they were getting all dressed up to go. And I was like, "Oh, are you got a little guy that you're interested in at church?" No. They looked at me like, well, my father will help. It's old school.
Yeah.
And of course, some of them are not. But they looked at me like I was like, no, I wouldn't consider, flirting with, a boy or something at church. I mean, they looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wow, man. But the families are so structured in the way that you just don't start that early.
Right.
And these were teenage girls.
Yeah.
And they were just like, no.
I love that they had such a great relationship with their dad to know that, that he had their best interests at heart, that he was able to protect them and provide for them in a way that made them feel secure and not have the need for going outside for that affirmation or that security that they're not going to find in the places that some of our kids think that they're going to find it.
And these are families that are probably living in poverty. I mean, everybody's like, well, but I have to do this and I have to work, and their parents work all the time.
Right.
But they still have that relationship because they come here. People don't realize when you come here and you immigrate and you don't get any benefits for being a migrant, you get nothing from the federal government, nothing from the state. You come with the clothes on your back and what you can carry in your suitcase, and you start over.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what an immigrant does. It's different from a migrant, completely different. And people who don't understand that when there's such I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because there's too many other things to talk about, but it's such a passion for me. But these are some amazing people. And these are people, they don't have money. They're not like, oh, well, they can afford. No, the dad in this situation works all the time.
Right.
And hardly ever see him, but the amazing relationship he has with his kids is just beautiful.
Right.
Anyway, decisions, choices, and options. We lovingly refer to it as DCO. So the DCO dinner is tomorrow night. I got to do a break. Let me just set up the dinner real quick. Tomorrow night, Temple Baptist Church, 6 p.m., and we will make room for you. I mean, we'll just, some of us that are...
Sit at my table and I'll stand up.
Yeah, exactly. And you can have my dinner. It's fine. I don't like eating at night anyway. So, but we'll have more. It's just like my friend that I told him, I said, I will save a seat for you and we'll make room for you.
Yeah.
Even if I have all 8 seats full, we'll make room for you. Come on. So I'm going to stay on them, but
I was going to say, I think we are filling up too. I think we maybe have 15 spots left. So,
okay, guys, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. So, I mean, I've got room at my table for 4 right now. I've got a couple of invites out that I haven't heard from on, but we will make room for you. So please, you need to know about this program. Yeah. It is so vital, and it is literally when you're like, what can we do to save our country? This is it. You change it from the inside out, just like those people she was mentioning that we'll just not mention from the Sanger group and all that.
Yeah.
They understood. We change it from the inside out. Well, that's how we get it back.
That's right.
That's how we get it back is from the inside out. You wonder why some of us have retired into teaching and why we're in the classroom? Yeah. There's a reason.
Kids are that valuable.
You better believe it. There is a reason. And anyway, I got to do my break. We're going to talk about Veterans Motorplex real quick. We didn't get to race this weekend because it was really kind of crazy. But we didn't lose our racetrack like so many other people did. It was just incredible. But they did have to cancel the races, of course, this weekend. But they'll be set to race again this coming weekend. Racing happens every Saturday, weather permitting, from March to October at Veterans Motorplex at the Rim. This is at the old historic Highland Rim Speedway. You're just about to run out of time to go to the races. I'm probably going to be there with my grandson, not this weekend, but the next, because I really want to get him to the races. He's 8 years old. He will have so much fun.
Yes, he will.
Because it is a blast. A $40 ticket will get up to 6 kids and 2 adults in. I mean, this is such a family-friendly environment. It is it's a 1/4-mile high-banked asphalt bull ring of a track that is, the greats have raced on this track. And they've been having a double header with the Bandoleros and the Legends. That was the plan this past Saturday, so they may move it to this coming Saturday. No matter what, it's going to be a great race. It's going to be a lot of fun. They'll have events for the kids. They got a great concession stand. So come out and come hungry, but come out and support this historic racetrack, Veterans Motorplex at the Rim. This is Old Highland Rim Speedway, but definitely follow them at Highland Rim Speedway on social media, so you can always check and see if there's any kind of rain delay, postponements, anything like that. And we've had a lot of rain delays, so they might race a weekend or two into November, weather permitting. Sometimes they'll do that, but again, the guarantee is through the end of October weather permitting. Get out to the gates will open at 4:15. Racing starts at 7. It's a great time. On the Old Highland Rim Speedway, this is Veterans Motorplex at the Rim, and let them know that U-Turn sent you. All right, we are talking with Suzanne Geerholt.
This is Jonathan Wilburn, and you're listening to Middle Tennessee and Southern Kentucky.
Maiden name.
Maxwell.
Okay, so it's so much easier.
So
I
much
was a
easier.
Wilson. I went to Vivio, and people go, Vizio? No, Vivio.
Right.
Suzanne's here, and she's with DCO and Decisions, Choices, and Options. We got a big dinner, a big fundraiser dinner tomorrow, and it's at Temple Baptist. Thank y'all for hosting, by the way.
Yes.
So thankful to you for hosting.
Providing the meal. They have
Yes.
really locked arms with us and are going above and beyond.
I heard y'all say that, so they have really not. And I mean, this is what our churches should be doing, guys.
Yeah.
Every one of us should have this kind of an involvement with a program like this. And what are we missing? What are we missing? I mean, we're down to the last 9 minutes here.
I think one of the things that we need so much in Robertson County, we're so excited that we're now funded by the Robertson County Commission.
Yes.
They actually approved an increase for us this year. So they see the great need, your community sees the great need for our children to be educated on these topics. So we're super grateful for that. Would love to have somebody from the Robertson County Commission.
We will
come
have
out.
one. Martin will be there.
Yes,
And but I'm going to make a call to another one of the commissioners that I thought, I bet she might like to come.
That would
So,
be
yeah,
fantastic.
I'll make another call.
We're trying to, last year, the goal was to get into the middle schools and teach healthy boundaries in the middle schools. We've been able to do that, and I think all but one. So you can be praying that we will get into that one. Cost of parenting, we're looking to expand that program, but we need the funds to do that.
Right.
We have an educator ready and waiting to go into those classrooms as soon as we can get the funding to pay her to
Yeah.
be able to go in and do that.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are, and you'll get to meet all of them.
The educators that are doing this, they're not making the money that the rest of us are making.
No.
So they're
We consider them,
sacrificing.
yes.
They're sacrificing
Yes.
to do this because, and I know that I've had that conversation with Joy a couple of times where people that they're like, we're hoping to get them, but then they were just like, I really need to make that.
Right.
It would be
The income.
wonderful if they could be paid what the district's paying.
Right.
Because I mean, that's a hard thing to turn. I mean, when your financial situation is difficult. And so,
And we're truly a nonprofit organization. We're not paying benefits and all of the things
Exactly.
out too.
It's not funded by the
They're
government.
warriors on the
guys.
front line.
You know, they've
That's right.
turned down funding
That's right.
and grants because they had attachments that were like, we can't do that.
They violated our
Yeah.
ethics. We weren't
Yeah.
able to.
Yeah. And so that's happened. So that's the kind of group that Decisions, Choices, and Options, that's what they're about.
Yep.
Oh, I can't say enough about this. And again, Suzanne and I were talking when she sat down. I'm like, oh, it's a busy week. Because, I mean, I'll just plug this too. We've got the Isaiah 117 House fundraiser on Thursday as well.
Mm.
And these are programs that are connected. And you
Right.
don't, I mean, they're all connected because that's what the Isaiah 117 House is about. It's about changing from the inside out and helping these kids that are in these foster situations. That's
Right.
another thing. When we talk about wanting to discourage abortion and encourage adoption and fostering,
Right.
we all need to be promoting that wonderful movie that came out of Texas where this church adopted all these kids.
Yes.
That's the call of the church, man. And we
Right.
all need to be praying so diligently about that. God, what do you want me to do? And then follow the conviction. It's a scary thing to
Right.
do. But you go, what am I supposed to do, Lord?
And if you want to reduce the number of children that are ending up in foster care, how about we start talking to our teenagers really about what it looks like to
Amen.
be a parent as a
Yes.
teenager when I'm not fully equipped and ready to do that, or somebody who is already struggling and doesn't have the support and the resources around them. We have a beautiful partnership with Open Door Pregnancy Resource Center in
Another one.
Springfield. Yeah, and they'll be there tomorrow night
Yes.
too.
Uh-huh.
Sean Elmore is a great friend to DCO and partner, and so just super excited. If we want to reduce the number of children ending up in a foster care situation, then we will educate our students first to delay that sexual activity until marriage, because then we won't have as many children ending up in the foster care system. But then if we can get them to see that adoption is a good option for them and for their children, again, we will reduce that number. But like you said, getting involved in doing something, making sure that we're supporting those agencies and those other community partners that will lead to abundant life for our children. We need to be working together. There is definitely a need. The need is greater than any of us can handle on our own, but working together, we can meet that need. and change.
I had a teacher friend of mine that is retired, and I think this is something she would like to do. And so, we at the dinner, she came to the dinner with me,
That's right.
and I think she's going to be there again tomorrow night. And I just want to kind of keep nudging her, going, yeah. This would be such. Of course, she's just really kind of drinking in the fact that she's retired. She don't
Yes,
wanna
enjoy
drink it.
that. Yes,
Trying to enjoy that.
Yeah.
And so we'll leave you alone for a minute.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that would just be wonderful. Another
Yeah.
friend of mine that's from Kentucky, that's like, she has a friend that was a administrator and that quit teaching because of the frustration for the things like you're talking about. that
Right.
They
The things that they had to teach.
Yes.
Yep.
And just she's done. She stepped away. And I'm like,
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Bring your friend
Yes,
to,
come on.
to this, because we'd love, because we're not in Kentucky, right?
No, we're not.
We're in
Kentucky.
we're in Tennessee.
We're in Tennessee, in 11
Alabama.
counties of Tennessee, in Sumner, Robertson, Davidson, and Wilson. Really private schools mostly in Davidson and Wilson. But Lawrence, Wayne, and Giles counties, and some of our poorest counties in Grundy, Coffee,
Yes.
Moore, and Franklin. Though I don't know what those counties would do. They don't even have curriculum. And we found that even in some of our classrooms here, they don't have the curriculum to teach the standards that we're teaching.
Yeah.
So we come in and meet the need
Right.
when teachers don't even have the curriculum
Right.
to teach what we're teaching, that are state standards and mandated by law
Yeah.
are taught to our children. And then we are also in Alabama. And serving in about 6 counties down there with our educators.
It
And
needs
so
to be across.
it's growing.
Needs to be across the country, though. We need to grow
Yeah.
so much more, and the only way we can do it is with your support. And to my friends, it's like, can I just write you a check? Yes, you can, but you'll write me a bigger one if you'll come to the dinner.
Yeah, come on.
So there you go. Come on. Let me do my last break, and then we'll come in and wrap it up. Just can't say enough about this program tomorrow night. We hope you'll be a part of it. And if you can't be there, then just look it up, and I'll get Suzanne to give you all the particulars on how they can find all the information, okay?
Yes.
But let's pause and let's talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards with Exit Prime Realty, just great friends in the community. They're another couple that I would love to get to this, because they are so involved in so many things in the community, and they care about what's going on in our community. And that's one of the reasons why I love them in the real estate, because they're just, you mentioned Open Door. They do all those videos for Open Door, because Barry's a marketer. He was a vice president of a media marketing company for 17 years before he went full-time in real estate. And so he is gifted at really presenting an idea. And can you imagine having somebody like that on your team when it comes to presenting your property? That is a game changer, from videography to photography to drone footage to walkthrough tours, all of those things that he can do to make sure that your property is seen in the absolute best light when you decide to go to market with it. Or maybe you're sitting down at the table and it's like, I'm ready to buy. How much can I buy? Interest rates are high. Well, what they'll tell you, Barry and Rebecca will tell you, when interest rates are high, house prices go down. Interest rates go down, house prices go up. So it's always a good time to buy. Rebecca's one of the first in the area to be a seniors real estate specialist. If that's something you need to know more about, you're somebody that's like, I'm just time to downsize. She's an expert at that. You can call her at 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425. They're cross-Planians. They specialize in Robertson County properties, but they also buy and sell in the surrounding counties and across the state line in Kentucky, because like me, they're from Kentucky originally, but they've been across Plains nearly 30 years and have just worked all over. So they know the area, they know the market. They are expert at what they do. Go to sellwithbecky.com, sellwithbecky.com, or buy.robertsoncounty.com. Again, Becky's number, 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425, Exit Prime Realty, and let them know. It's fine. We will take your money. And we would love for you to know more about it, because you need this in your church. You need it in your home. You need to get this for your grandkids. Don't let them get into these risky situations without being fully informed. How can they find out more?
They can find out more by going to our website at DCO, for decisions, choices, and options, INC as incorporated.org. So DCOINC.org.
That's the easiest way.
Yep. And there are tabs out there. You can find out all about us, all about the programs that we teach, and the events that we have going on at Temple Baptist too. We will have Parent Power starting on October the 16th. So for 3 Wednesday nights in a row, the 16th, the 23rd, and the 30th. So we're not interfering with Halloween. We will also offer Parent Power. And at the same time we're offering Parent Power, we're hoping to raise those funds to free up that educator to also come and talk to the students at Temple Baptist. So
Awesome.
that's what we're working on. That's the goal of
awesome.
tomorrow night.
So DCOINC
DCOINC.
There's no dots in there. DCOINC.org. DCOINC.org.
Yep.
That's how you can find out more if you want to come to the dinner. I still have some seats. We are filling up, but we want to pack the house. We want to pack the house, and I'll be more than happy to let you have my dinner. Because
That's right.
I don't like eating at night anyway, so
Yep.
give me a good excuse to fast tomorrow night. So would love that.
And if they still like the old-fashioned way of reaching out by phone call, they can reach me at 615-447-5263.
Do that number one more time.
It's 615-447-5263.
Thank you, Suzanne. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Thank you for
Time's gone by, I've traded.
Somebody ought to say hallelujah. Praise the Lord.